Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Ankerstar Wealth Morning Show. I'm your host, Allison Ankerstar, and today we'll be talking about Secure Act 2.0, Social Security, and the Southwest quote-unquote Flightmare. But before we begin, as a reminder, this is a financial education presentation and should not be construed as personal financial advice. Full disclaimer information is available at ankerstarwealth.com. Good morning, Steve. Secure Act 2.0 is here. What are some of the highlights?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for that intro, Allison. And a couple of announcements first. Have some exciting changes going on here at Ankerstar Wealth. I'll be reaching out to clients here during this week at some point. A new financial planning software that's out that helps to incorporate some estate planning stuff. So that's pretty exciting, and more to follow on that. Secondly, we're also going to add the other advisors to this morning show slide. And as we go into 2023, that's one of the goals of the team is to get some guest appearances, if you will, from some of the advisors sharing their knowledge on the show as well. So those are things I wanted to announce. Let's talk about Secure Act 2.0. Now, the reality of Secure Act 2.0 is that's a Southwest slide. Let's get over to 2.0. It is, this thing just got passed. It's included in the bill with a billion other things, right? Literally, or trillion or whatever. But you're going to start hearing pieces of this, and that's why we're going to talk about pieces of this first. But there is going to be, it takes a while when these things are released. The IRS has to read it and then put out new guidance. That does not happen overnight. They also have lives, or are stranded by Southwest. That they can't get this stuff out the next day, right? So it's going to take a little time for the IRS to put out the guidance, which is why I'm going to a conference in Vegas. And you're like, ooh, fun for Steve. Well, not really. Look at this brutal schedule. So it's a 2-day conference all about Secure Act 2.0 and navigating it, impact on stretch IRAs, post-death rules. I mean, just everything in and out for 2 days, from 8 to 5 with an hour lunch break. So caffeine will be a must, but I have to pay to go to this thing and to get a lot of information to be able to turn around and share with you all. So expect that, and we'll talk about the implementation of it. Is not immediate, right? So some things will hit in 2023, the rest will be delayed a little bit. So let's talk about a few of these. There's some highlights. We'll get into the weeds here. Let's see, catch-up contributions. We talked about it the other day, the up to $7,500 in 2023 for your 401k. In 2025, that's where when we talked about the individuals over 60 being able to make these catch-up contributions. Well, that's not next year, right? That's 2025. So, you have to wait for that, obviously. Okay, it requires automatic enrollment in 401k. So if you're switching jobs, you're going to get hit with this automatic enrollment, but you can opt out, that sort of thing. Let's see. Traditional money that you put up or additional funds you can put in can go right into a Roth, so it can grow tax-free forever. Also, there's for company matches, another change in Secure Act 2.0 is that company matches, which have always had to go traditional because that money isn't taxed, now can go to the Roth. Now, I don't understand the taxability of that because every dollar is taxed once. So you probably are taxed on those matching contributions now as income. So we shall see. Before they would go in tax-free into your traditional, and then your tax on it later when we have to pull it out. So we'll need some more information there. All right, the catch-up info, matching contributions into a Roth. We talked about that. Okay, this is probably the biggest the biggest aha is how they were going to do this. So the required minimum distribution, which obviously if you're younger than 60, you may or may not care. But at some point, you spend your whole life funding these retirement accounts. And if you fund the traditional side, you have to take an RMD. The other option that I've gone is convert everything to Roth and pay the taxes now. That way I don't have to worry about it later. But that's a choice, and there's some math behind that. But certainly if you have a big traditional account, Secure Act 1.0 moved it from 70 and a half to 72 for the age at which you have to take required minimum distributions. Now, Secure Act 2.0 changes it really immediately. starting next year, but that's what, 3 days away, three market days away. It goes to 73. Okay. So there's going to be some what ifs if you're caught like exactly at that, December 31st or January 1st birthday. So we'll sort through the details of, people that are right around the cut line. But it goes to 73, but then you got to wait a decade before it to go to 75. I could see a Secure Act 3.0 reversing that and bringing it a lot closer. 10 years is a long time, right? So think 73 now, and then obviously there's 10 years worth of folks that aren't going to see that change to 75, right? So 73 is going to be the new number starting in 2023. Also, the penalty is going to be 25% instead of 50. You shouldn't be taking a penalty. If you are, then that's because you dorked it up. If you're working with a financial firm, then they'll make sure that you keep that straight and don't get hit with a penalty. Okay, Roth 401ks. Not many people have these at the age in which you have to take distributions. But if you leave your money with your employer, either because you're still working there or after you retire, and not convert it to an IRA, that's your choice. That's an uncommon choice. But if you leave it there, you're going to have to take distributions. So most people don't know that. So don't mess that up, because there would be a penalty there too. Of now only 25% of your money, not 50. That is all I'm going to talk about there. Let's see, there was a couple in here that, okay, hardship distributions, whether this is a good thing or not, is Secure Act 2.0 means you can pull up to $1,000 from your IRA for financial hardship. Whether you should or shouldn't, different discussion, right? But it lets you pull without having to have a 10% penalty. A much better option. Generally, your situation is individual, and this is not personalized advice, but generally it is better to pull from, get a loan from your 401k, if you will. But anyhow, there's a hardship option out of your IRA now. I don't know how the custodians will handle that, or the tax form for it, or whatever. It'll probably just be a regular distribution, be an early distribution with no penalty, is how I would imagine. But just realize you can reach in for $1,000 if you need to out of your IRA. Also, as just kind of a side note, and I need to do another piece on this, if during COVID in 2020 you rated your retirement accounts because you could, remember the rules where you had 3 years to put it back? Yeah, we're coming up on year 3. So 50,000 a person, maybe 100,000 a person kind of comes to mind. Just realize if you did that, and you don't put it back, then you're going to be continuing to, you're going to eat that tax bill. If you put it all back, then the taxes you've paid the past couple of years, you get it all back. So that could be confusing for some. Also, I'll do another piece on that exactly. But that's what we know now for Secure 2.0. Other things will roll out. And then again, I'm going off to a conference in February to find out the specifics to be able to bring it back to you.
Next, Social Security reform is back on the table with a couple of proposals for 2023. What are some of the things being looked at?
Okay, normally I use a normal source here, but the best one I found for this is the Motley Fool. So I'm not endorsing them or their views, and there's a political side of it. So just realize that this is just so I could throw some information up here. But what I really wanted to show you is what is being proposed by the Biden administration. There are several ways. So think conceptually first. Okay, with Social Security, it's going to run out of money in like 10 years. And to be able to pay full benefits and then be reduced benefits. So what are some ways to change this? So if you could pull different levers, if you will, on reform, you can slide the retirement age to the right, meaning you can't claim until they could take 62 and move that to the right as your first option to claim, or they could take your last option to claim and move that to the right. Well, generally that across the board that'd be one way to manage things. Another way is to, right now it's you pay a percentage and your employer pays a percentage together out of each paycheck to go into Social Security. They could increase that percentage. Right? That is probably the least likely to change because it's already pretty high. But what could change is right now up to 145,000 is taxed. I think that I'm sure that number that's change in maximum is 160 now. 160,000 for 2023. is you pay that tax, and above that you don't pay into Social Security anymore. Well, one way to solve the problem to get more money flowing in would be to move that payroll tax cap up, and people obviously are very against that. So they came up with this idea of having the donut, if you will, meaning you're taxed up to the normal 160,000, then you aren't taxed up to the numbers 400,000 here annually. So again, nothing changes there. But if you make more than 400,000 annually, then now you start paying in again. So I think that has a pretty high chance of getting passed as I would say, least worst of the options. So we'll see. If it doesn't get passed, it's just because the government split and everybody wants to not move forward on this. But eventually we do need to move forward on Social Security. 10 years will be here. I said that's a long time, but also it's here before you know it, right? So and Social Security, every year you wait makes the problem worse, that you have to take more drastic action. So I do think it's going to be a topic that we're going to be discussing quite a bit in 2023.
Last, more information is coming out about the so-called Southwest quote-unquote Flightmare. What's the latest?
Well, it's ongoing, and they've said basically what I've seen in the open press is that it's going to take through the end of the year to get right-sized. So 2,500 flights on Wednesday is the headline you're looking at. This is the New York Times, so take that with a grain of salt, but should be pretty unbiased, right? Just reporting facts here, but again, you've probably seen a lot of information on the struggles, the legacy software they had running things. I did go back when I searched Southwest Flightmare before I hit news. If you just hit the regular ones, it's back in June. There was a Southwest strike over this same thing. I mean, so the pilots and the flight attendants were kind of calling it. You kind of do have to take that with a grain of salt sometimes, because those are employees will generally especially larger groups of unionized employees with very capable leadership can challenge the company significantly. But they kind of called out all these things back in 6 months ago, and now we're kind of living with it. They say it's management's fault. Yep. Who knows? There was a storm, sure. I'm sure it's probably all the above, right? A true not comedy of events, but more of the tragedy of events, if you will. But a lot of folks are stranded. A lot of people have asked, why is all the baggage sitting around there? I thought there was a picture. There it is. So I had a client share a story with me where you're at the airport and your flight gets canceled. Well, if you're going to something or you need to meet something, then the next step is go rent a car and drive, right? Because there were no more flights. Well, the issue with the baggage is the baggage had already been uploaded to the airplane. So as soon as you check your bag, it goes into, of course, a big logistics system. And then when that airplane pulls up, then the bags get loaded, right? Well, there's nobody there to unload the bags because they're offloading other bags because that plane was supposed to go. So since the plane's not supposed to be there, there's not a crew scheduled to unload the bags. So, I mean, it's kind of a nightmare. So a lot of the bags just stayed there. And of course, if you've tried to call Southwest, no, you can't get through on the phone. So you may or may not know, this person had to, while they drove, they stopped by a couple of airports along the way, and they finally found one where the line was short enough where they were willing to stand in it and talk to a baggage person and actually find that their bag was still back in Austin because the flights had been canceled out to, in this case, it was California, which is also where we were trying to go this week. But obviously there's nightmare stories out there. Some are affected more than others. I don't mean to make light of it. But there is I did see something from Southwest that you can make a claim. So if you still go through southwest.com, you can claim if you were, it cost you money and you had to get hotels or, rental cars or adversely affected from your plans, you can make a claim on their website, and they're not saying that they're going to pay that, but certainly you can at least plead your case if you were affected, monetarily, emotionally, family event. So that's available to you. We'll probably throw something in there. Ours cost us a little bit from, stuff we had, we couldn't quite turn off on our trip. But anyhow, it's continuing. Hopefully it's fixed by January. I've got another trip coming up January 2nd on a Southwest flight. So kind of stay tuned. But as far as when you look at the other carriers are pretty well booked up, but they're not canceling, right? So there's not a lot of flight availability because so many Southwest passengers have flipped to other carriers, but they also aren't canceling as well. So that's an option for you if you absolutely need to get somewhere. all the other carriers seem to be about another, $100 a ticket higher than Southwest. I think that's why Southwest got so popular. But anyhow, it's your choice. But if you're traveling, hopefully this night, the Flightmare, quote unquote Flightmare, will end by at least the end of the year here in a few days, and we'll be off to some normalcy in air travel going into 2023.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Please submit your questions as a comment through social media or directly to our email at vipservices@ankerstarwealth.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to get daily updates. That's all we have for today's show. I'm Allison Ankerstar, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.